Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Ohio X Tech Talk. I want to thank you all for being here and taking some time out of your day to join us for this conversation, which I'm really looking forward to because it's a fascinating intersection between corporations and startups and the partnership and innovation and the opportunities and issues that that relationship presents. We have a fantastic panel lined up for you today, but I'm just going to do a very quick and short intro of Dan Cole, who's the head of sales and business development at SPROCKIT. He's going to lead the conversation. I'm going to take a step back, help moderate some of the chat. And also, as we're discussing, one of the things that we'd love for you to do, for those of you watching live, is go to the chat bar. You can send comments directly to everyone. You can send it to Dan, you can send it to me, and we'll help facilitate the conversation. But between Annette and Stephen, and some of the insight that they're going to be bringing from their perspectives in this space, it's sure to be a fascinating conversation. And so, Dan, I want to turn it over to you, allow you to do an introduction of yourself, of SPROCKIT, and share a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today.
Chris, thank you so much, and thanks for having us. SPROCKIT is a proud member of Ohio X, and you and I made contact during 2021, and we're just thrilled to be a part of Ohio X, and also want to thank you so much for inviting us to have this panel today. We've got three great panelists that I think everybody in attendance will absolutely enjoy their insights and their wisdom. So I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. I'm going to let our founder, Harry Glazer, in just a moment tell you a little bit about SPROCKIT when he makes his introduction. I can only tell you that I'm thrilled and honored to be part of SPROCKIT. I come from, the majority of my career was spent at the Consumer Technology Association, which produces and owns the Consumer Electronics Show. So I've had the good fortune of having insights and exposure to the technology world, and I've always followed it around, and hence my involvement here at SPROCKIT. Harry, if you'll indulge me, we're going to call on you last because I'm going to call on our other two esteemed panelists. Harry will round us out with SPROCKIT, and we'll be good to go. So first, I'll just ask Annette and Steve. We'll go with Annette first. Just introduce yourself, if you will. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've done, and what you're doing now.
Great. I'm really thrilled to be here today. I'm Annette Tonti. I'm the managing director of something called RIHub. We're Rhode Island. It's a state on the East Coast. We're Rhode Island's innovation hub. Actually, before that, I was a serial entrepreneur. I built 3 high-tech startups. I raised over 30 million in investment. And before that, I actually worked in big corporations. And I really enjoy pulling together corporate and innovation. And let me just say one more thing before that. I went to the University of Cincinnati. So I spent a lot of years in Ohio.
Well, you've got out of all your very, very credible experience, that's probably the most credible, Annette, that you participated or attended University of Cincinnati, and therefore helped the economy of Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to call on Steve Santamaria next, who is a fellow. Do you call it, Chris? Or Steve? Do you call it Ohioan? If that's what it is. So Steve is a fellow compadre of everyone here. Steve, take it away.
They call me a boomerang in Ohio because I spent the early part of my career in Ohio. Then I moved to the West Coast, where I worked for a number of technology companies, including Intel Corporation. I am the CEO of Folio Photonics. I came back to Ohio to work with this company to spin out of Case Western Reserve in deep tech, high tech, and we can talk about that later. Trying to really kind of kickstart and get the technology revolution happening in Ohio and see a real growth in this type of these type of businesses. I am a 2-time alumni of the SPROCKIT organization, so I can give some insight into how I work with SPROCKIT and how I am taking an Ohio company that's technology based and engaging all the big guys on the coast. You're muted, Dan.
Thought I clicked it off. Thank you, Stephen. We're thrilled and privileged to have you part of SPROCKIT, and thank you for your support. And Harry Glazer, who's my boss and the founder of SPROCKIT, and has really founded a really special and unique organization that we're going to hear about today, or his wisdom with regard to innovation. Let me introduce to you Harry, and you are on mute just to make sure that you go off mute. You're still on mute, sir. There you go.
All good. So today was interesting. So I run a tech marketplace, yet I couldn't get my computer and Zoom to work. So I'm on my phone. So hopefully you can see me. It's strange things happen. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, SPROCKIT is a curated marketplace for startups, corporations, and investors to collaborate. And we collaborate on bringing innovative products to market. And that's done through partnerships, investments, and acquisitions. We get together once a quarter. It used to be physical, now it's virtual. And our founding partners are Google, Samsung, Comcast, Fox, Hearst, yada, yada. And our startups come from 18 different countries around the world. They've raised over $2 billion and $1 billion since joining the marketplace. And we've had 25 exits on average within 2 years of the marketplace. And that's it.
Great introduction, Harry. Thank you very much. And congratulations to a great start or great founding and also continuation with SPROCKIT as well. So with Chris's permission, the way this will happen is what we have some questions that have come in beforehand and also some that I want to ask as well. You'll see that we'll have somewhat of a round robin. I know we're limited for time, so I want to keep an eye on that. But Annette, if I could, let me start with you and just ask you a very general question from your experience. Why do big legacy companies need to innovate?
Well, in a word, shareholder value. But frankly, it's proven time and time again, the pace and rate of change, it actually is very logarithmic. It's happening faster than ever. If these corporations don't keep up, they will actually go away. So we actually know the fact that 20 years ago, we actually had a certain set of Fortune 500 companies. Of those, more than half of those right now are gone. So just in a 20-year span, these companies either are gone or they get acquired quickly. And the reason why is technological advances and actually business model advances have changed things so much. They have to change, or they either have to innovate or die.
And the rate of change over the past 20 years, the changeover is just simply breathtaking. And I know it's caught a lot of people by surprise, but the word innovation is so key here and will continue to be. Steve, I know you alluded to this a little bit. We were talking before the call about your experience on the West Coast and with Intel. Any thoughts in terms of that same question or piggybacking what Annette had said?
Yeah, I would agree with everything Annette said. For a large corporation, they have to commit X number of resources to innovation and over the horizon next generation products, services, models. And one of the ways they augment that is by engaging with the startups and making minimal, we call them at Intel, eyes and ears investments, so that we can track on this new technology. And if they would happen to hit it, then we come in and buy them. But so you kind of outsource your R&D. And you see a lot of that happening nowadays. Is there's a lot of companies that never go straight to the market, right? They go to IPO, they get folded into the larger corporations. And there are huge teams of these people at the large corps out there looking for these opportunities.
Great. And I was reading a McKinsey report yesterday that talked about outsourcing R&D and how that's such an important part of the whole equation, not just know-how and resources from a marketing, sales, and product standpoint, but also that R&D, which I guess folds into products. Harry, why do you think companies are having such a hard time finding effective and efficient ways to innovate?
I guess the first thing is that, they're overloaded. They're getting a fire hose of deals sent at them. They're getting accelerators, they're getting venture folks, they're getting consultants. Everybody's coming at them, but nobody's really looking at their problem first. They're selling them what they have. And, a big corporation, one of the biggest things is what made them king today won't make them king tomorrow or queen tomorrow. They've got to do something different. They got to keep up with the marketplace. So you have up here, you have big margins, big markets. Take down here, Netflix. When it first started, they looked at small margin, small market. They created the beast that killed them. almost killed them or is in the way of their major battle.
Gotcha. Annette, what do you think about
Yeah,
that in terms
I mean,
of what Harry said?
Harry's right on. And I'll tell you, the really interesting thing about this is the superpower that big corporations have is everything they do, how their corporate structure is set up, every process, everything they do is set for scale. And that exact scale is, that exact setup doesn't work for innovation. The time scales are different. You need to test and learn and spin a little differently. So the culture of a big corporation, again, set up for scale. It's beautiful if you can scale. But once you get to scale, it's really hard to innovate. So it's a big DNA difference between the two.
I'll put each of you on the spot, or one of you can answer this question without naming the name of the organization, or you can. Do you have any examples of spectacular failure in terms of companies trying to innovate and they fell behind in doing so? And again, you don't have to name the name, or you can. I'd be curious to know what and why, or who and why. Steve.
Kodak.
GE.
Right? There's a one time they were the de facto photography, film base, etc. They had all the technology and it's gone. Xerox, right? I mean, the Xerox Park is where all this technology came of it. They never monetized it. And you don't hear any of those companies anymore.
Yeah, and not only from a phone standpoint, but who would have thunk we would see a ton of digital cameras come out? And I don't believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Kodak was first to the table with that. And coming from CES, Kodak used to have a huge presence at CES, and suddenly they weren't applicable. And for me, that was very, very sad. It wasn't just a loss of one of our major exhibitors, it was one that became irrelevant. Harry, you mentioned GE.
GE, BlackBerry, Motorola, Hostess Cupcakes, Sears. I mean, you go on and on. They didn't keep up with the times. Again, if you do what made you the leader yesterday, you're guaranteed not to be the leader tomorrow. But they're so set, as Annette said, it's a scale issue.
Yep.
I mean, again, I want to go back to the Disney Netflix thing. They didn't care about it. They thought that was not their business. Content was king. Well, guess what? Netflix is now making all the content cheaper prices. They're paying more for all the actors and the producers, and it's a real battle.
Steve, you had a point.
Okay, I did look at one company. You look at IBM, and you look at how they have innovated and they have pivoted their business over the years. I mean, you think of IBM, you think of computers. When it first started, IBM first made knives that went into butchers to slice salamis, right? Then they went into typewriters. They pivoted then. Then they went into the mainframes, to the PCs. Then they sold all their hardware businesses and they became a software company and a services company. It is just, when you look at some of the role model, you're going, how they navigated this innovation and it's really about being honest, right? I mean, everybody, when you're building a company, you think like, hey, we're going to be great forever. Well, the truth of the matter, it's not. And when you have the guts to look at yourself and saying, whoops, we have a diminishing return here, and our market it's going to pivot and happen and move quickly. You can't just sit there and belabor it for years upon years upon years. And that's what people do. Like they just ride that path down. And that's where innovation is important. It's being able to innovate into the new markets, but at the same time being able to pivot your company, take advantage of those new markets that you're creating.
Agreed. If for those of you in our audience or even on the panel that have not read Blue Ocean Strategy, I would commend it to your reading, and you'll see additional examples of Cirque du Soleil, of Yellowtail Wine, how they pivoted or stayed in a blue ocean instead of staying with their competition, which was the red ocean. Annette,
I was
you
just
had
going
a
to
thought?
say, I was just going to say, name every or any retail company, from Lord & Taylor to Toys R Us. And the thing is, it's not new news. Like Lord & Taylor, where have you been? Suddenly you're gone. And the answer is, we kind of saw this coming 20 years ago. So it's hard. Now, there are many corporations that are getting it right. And I think there's a little bit of secret that we can learn from them now.
I agree totally. Next question, and I would encourage everyone also to contribute to the chat. We're happy to throw any questions you have to the panel. Harry, through SPROCKIT, we've recognized pain points with the innovation model from both a corporate and startup perspective. Tell us a little bit, and I would acknowledge this is not a sales pitch for SPROCKIT. It's just very, very interesting in terms of how we're addressing innovation challenges. Tell us a little bit about SPROCKIT in terms of addressing pain points for corporate. We sort of, even through unintentionally through our conversation, teed up that question, I think, automatically.
Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to talk to the company and understand their, what their challenges are and where they're going. And that's not just talking to the venture group or the corp dev group, because they're very different. Venture group wants unicorns. Corp dev wants $100 million companies that can make $1 billion. The operating team, we've learned, are kind of the stepchildren, and they're in different silos. Within a company, they could have 10 different P&Ls. They don't always talk to each other, and even within a P&L, they have competing goals and budgets and time. So they're all just going after that high margin business, big volume, and they're ignoring this little small market down here. So and most of the, you find out all this the further down you go the chain, because they're the one closest to the customer.
Excellent. Annette, talk to us a little, if you would, about the nature of the operations team as Harry described it. I agree fully. I have through SPROCKIT, I've seen almost a manic, not desperate, for a manic need for innovation, which is the theme of this whole discussion, but a manic need for innovation. But there is a lot, from my observation, I think Harry alludes to that, a lot of miscommunication within in terms of who seeks out innovation and evangelizing solutions within an organization, within a large corporation. I think the startups on this call, regardless of the vertical that you're involved with, as they seek out partnerships with corporates, I'm going to ask Steve afterwards as well. Tell us about your experience jumping on what Harry said in terms of these innovation teams, whether it be investment teams, whether it be corporate development, whether it be the C-suite. What are your feelings on that?
Well, so the best companies that do this really well, the best corporations, have alignment at the very top. It's owned by the C-suite. The C-suite is in all the way, and they get the importance of it. And so they actually can set up the right organization structures. One of the problems you have is once you get into the operational lines, I mean, listen, you take them out for a beer, they all get it. They all want to do more. But the problem is they've got very short time frames to actually make a difference within, every 3 months. So it's really difficult for them to stop, take a breath, go out and do the work. However, if the C-suite is in, they will generally do the right things across the board, including putting together not just corporate venture, but perhaps, kind of work with curation teams, like SPROCKIT, like the big accelerators. Those are the kind of companies that actually get it right. Because one of the other problems you have in a corporate world is bringing in a startup is a whole nother issue. It sets up a whole nother set of problems, first of which are antibodies, right? The people that don't want this to happen because their job might go away. So, it's kind of a push and pull, but we can see now the things that corporations can do right. And again, it does start at the top. Agreed.
And, human nature can be to reject solutions, even if they provide efficiencies, because it's not that we're jealous. It's the possibility of us losing our relevance or even our jobs accordingly. Steve, let me ask you to jump on that response from Annette, and also, and I'm going to go to Harry after this, knowing from a startup standpoint, you've been on both sides, knowing what Annette just described in terms of it is possible for them, you've got two things running against you, time and perhaps misalignment with the C-suite. How, I don't know if there's the best answer to this. Knowing this from a startup standpoint, how can a startup be best prepared or develop a strategy in the midst of or in spite of that challenge? Let's say misalignment, and as Annette said, time as well. Misalignment across various portions of the organization that ultimately decide on innovation?
Well, I think if you're talking to a large company and you're a startup, you're already misaligned. Because if you're aligned, they'd be in your business already. And so you're coming in with a better mousetrap or something new. So you have to go in with that expectation. The challenge that you have for these companies is trying to find the people that care and are willing to put their own ego aside and their reputation and evangelize for you. You need an evangelist who's gonna fight those internal battles. I mean, and the time scale difference between a startup and a large company is unbelievable. And I've been both sides. Like at Intel, 18 months to get a deal done. Yeah, that we felt pretty good about that. We thought, man, we're really working, we're crossing all the T's and the I's, and it's just, that's really fast. A startup, I'm out of money in 9 months.
Right.
Okay. So startups have a difference. So my coaching to startups is, as you try to crack into these large companies, is, you take a shot at it, and a warm introduction is the best way to find that person that'll be your evangelist. But do not get stuck in time wasting, the bar just keeps getting raised every other month. Boom, I did this. Well, let's go do that, and et cetera. You got to get to this decision point and some type of commitment as fast as possible. And these organizations that Annette's talking about, the corp dev, the investment teams, the venture teams, there's a whole kind of emergence of these in a lot of big companies. You got to find those guys so they can help you and basically accelerate that timeline. Time does not help a startup. And frankly, a big company just may want to see you just die on the vine and go away, right? I mean, that's a strategy, right? It's one way to kill your competition.
You're taking up their time maybe unnecessarily. And I would remind our audience and all three of us, including all four of us, that coming from a sales and business development background, it really doesn't matter exactly what your endeavors are in this regard. We're all business developers. We're all salespeople. We have to have a sense of urgency in this case from a startup standpoint. In 9 months we're out of money, and we have to find decision makers. So I'm going to go to Harry on this one, who has probably a record-breaking network. Harry, what have you found most effective in terms of reaching those champions or evangelists within the company? Or I would say, what are your best practices? Because if anyone can break into and I say that in a positive way, not break into, but be able to find the champions or evangelists, as Steve said, what are your best practices? Because you are a master of it.
Well, first thing is, as they always say, do your homework. Most people want the customer to understand them. That's not what it's about. You got to understand the customer before you want them to understand you and your product. And so most people go in there to sell. You don't go in there to sell. You go in there to ask questions and listen, build relationships. This is not a transaction. So it's, a warm entry in, but build the relationship. If you go in to sell to people, they're being sold all day long. They don't want to have any part of you. But if you just, hey, what's your problem? How do I make your job easier? How do I make you look like a rock star? I have this. Is this something within your group? If not, who should you refer me to in the organization? The biggest problem you have with these things, companies reorg about every 18 months. So you think you have it nailed with the right person? They're in a different position, and there goes all you're doing. So everything is about, it's timing. And sometimes, as you said, the mission changes from the top. There's a lot that you cannot control. Okay. You just have to, I think one of our startups said it well. You have to be patient, yet impatient.
I call that positive tension and a sense of urgency. So I agree with that totally. And decision makers change, and we go back to what Steve said. Time is our enemy. And the definition of luck, from what I've heard, is where opportunity and preparation meet, and there is luck involved with this. I think everybody would agree. If anybody had the magic bullet, we'd all be zillionaires, and of course that's our hope. But we do have to have patience, but at the same time realize that we have a finite amount of time, whether it's cash flow, whether it's competition, what have you. Annette, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's easy to do it wrong when you're in the entrepreneur's chair. It's so easy. I've done it wrong. So I'll give you an example. we had a startup company helping build mobile websites, and we were taken on by a gigantic company. We had a regular business, but we had taken on by a big company at the top. We thought, this is it. They're going to buy us. This is going to be great. We're going to work like crazy for a year. We did. We overbuilt our platform for them. We did everything for them. And then in September, I got a phone call. You know what? We're just going to stop this program. And the reason why was they didn't tell us everything. They didn't tell us that they needed it to move the needle like $100 million that we weren't going to do. And so we didn't hear all the details of the game while we were playing the game. And so to the detriment of the company, everybody pointed in that direction versus being impatient, right? We were patient over here. We weren't impatient enough to keep our other business going. So that was a rough ride.
One of the questions I've used, which, can be a little bit awkward, but it's really never backfired, is tell me, now that we've established this rapport and there's an opportunity with one another, tell me what red flags might appear. How could this fall apart? Well, why are you asking that question? Because I don't want it to fall apart. I'm here to serve you, as Harry said, to make your job easier. And I want to do this right. And my experience has been, as I'm talking to a prospect or a decision maker, that's the right approach in terms of making sure that we can, we're not going for perfection, but we are going for excellence in terms of our relationship. Steve.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes back to, if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing a startup, you are naturally an optimist, right? Your glass is always half full. And what the trouble people get themselves into is they ignore the warning signs and they keep just slogging you along. They kind of hope that something magical is going to happen. And then it doesn't. They're always shocked and they're surprised. But if they'd have read the warning signs 18 months before, they probably wouldn't have done it. So there's an element here, and I preach it, it's of intellectual honesty. Man, you got to be honest to yourself. I mean, don't bullshit yourself. You bullshit everybody else you want to, but yourself, you got to be honest with yourself, because you got to just make sure that, is our value proposition sound? Am I adding value to this partner? I mean, is it there? And you got to ask it every day, because things change, right? You got to pay attention to what's happening in the industry and saying, wow, given such and such acquisition, could this impact me? And then you have to be honest and think, well, it won't. Well, if you find yourself saying that, the answer really is yes, it will, right? And then you better have a path out of that. And just recognize, when you're talking to these big companies, you're in the business, when they look at you, you're in the business of risk mitigation to them, right?
Good point.
Mitigation.
Good point.
You're there to mitigate their potential losses down the road, or loss of customers, or pivots in the technology. And you got to make sure that value is still there, that's happening. Because, like I said, the one time when you ignore it, then you get some, like I untangled the deal that we did with a large Japanese firm, and we spent 2 years working with this company. But we're getting the signals, but we're going to get through it. We were just so bullish on it. And then when it was gone, we're very upset, and it took a long time to unwind and then kind of redirect ourselves. But be honest.
I think the two words, and by the way, that fit just part and parcel with what Annette said. I think the two words that you said, untangle and unwind, that is just an exhaustive use of time. The other thing I would say is, if we put all our eggs in one basket on those big fish on the pipeline, that's an issue. So the importance of keeping a full and fat pipeline, understanding that not everything is going to work out. Doesn't mean that we treat any of our prospects, from an inferior standpoint, but it is a numbers game to a degree. Doesn't mean that has to be not qualitative in terms of our pursuit of opportunities, but pipelines are really, really, really important. If we put our eggs in one basket, we are doomed to disappointment. Because Murphy's Law comes in. Annette said decision makers change, circumstances change. There are things like a pandemic out of nowhere that changed the entire world. Supply chains, the supply chain. Who knows what other risks are out there? And by the way, those are the risks that we can explore to mitigate. These are other risks that our corporate partners are facing. Not only the risk to us that, you know, things change on the corporate side. Harry, I think you wanted to add something as well.
You nailed it. I mean, you got to have plan A, B, and C. And just what you said, you got to, not all the eggs in one basket. And I was actually going to use that exact word. But even within an organization, I'll give you an example that SPROCKIT had. We had a great relationship with the CTO of Disney, 32 years. I had a relationship with everybody in the pipeline under him on the CTO's office. He retired. I figured we're in good shape. A new CTO came in, fired everybody underneath of him. So, you know, you got to go deep and you also have to go broad. It doesn't do, I mean, because it happens. I mean, you think I go, wow, we got this thing nailed. I've been burned before. No, got to go wide too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can tell you one of the best practices we use at SPROCKIT, but not only all of us with our networks as well. And Steve's a great example in terms of SPROCKIT. You have got to be able to leverage, and I think this was Steve's point before, your network in terms of a means of goodwill. And it's a reciprocal relationship. You can't keep going to the well with someone like Steve unless you are reciprocating what you can do for him and his startup. But Steve's been responsible for a number of referrals to SPROCKIT, as has Annette as well. And that's, you know, from a lean and mean standpoint, you know, we're a startup too in terms of where we're endeavoring to go. That's what we're depending upon. And so, but that doesn't necessarily work out as well, except the person who retired can also possibly give us some insight and advice. Annette, can you think of? I'll put you on the spot. It's okay if there's not a certain answer to this. Other pitfalls that, in terms of having to navigate, or that we can be prepared for, or certainly be the best we can prepare for. To Steve's point, to thy own self be true, and in terms of having a realistic and pragmatic approach to engaging with the big corporates.
Well, I think we hit a couple of real good ones today. I just want to kind of reiterate those. So Steve talked about the fact that you need to have your sponsor, I'll call it, somebody that is your champion. That one is key. You need to keep that person, you know, kind of lined up. Then what Harry said, right on. We would get in and then we'd walk the halls. So you go sideways, not just up and down. I mean, that is right on. And that's like an essential piece of it. And I'd say the reason why that's important is one of the big, there are many blockages that happen for you in a corporate setting. And some of those are just, you know, kind of process, and there's nothing you can do about that. But the people thing is a big one, the culture and people thing, where they'll just end up, there will be people that will see you as a threat. If you're an entrepreneur, right, and, you know, kind of that next future thing, they will do everything they can to, you know, I call it the antibody effect, to make your life miserable and make it not work. And kind of, you don't even know what's going on behind the scenes, but they're trying to prove that it's probably not a good solution. But, you know, time and time again, we're finding that the best solution here is, for big corporations, for innovation, is to work with these startups.
Yep. Yeah. And again, anticipating that, you know, there is a lot of blocking and tackling involved in approaching the corporate world, and also in anticipating this, possibly stressing to your evangelists, look, this is about efficiencies, but it doesn't, this is not, if this is the case, this is not about replacement. This is augmenting and doing better. It could end up being that way. And I'm not saying that's what to tell the prospect, to make it very, very clear at the beginning. And
I'll just say one more quick
sure.
thing to that. Many of us get into the game of entrepreneurship because we're not really good at the corporate politic thing. I know I have no time for it. I'm not good at it. So I said a long time ago, I'm out of here. I just got to roll. And so, you know, I can't tell you that I always, my antenna aren't always up when I'm working within a big corporation like that. So anyway, sorry.
Excellent.
Steve. Just one other thing. I know I've said it before, but I'm going to tell you, the number one thing you can do is build a relationship. It's not a transaction. It's not a sale. Get the person they have to actually like you before they trust you. let them like you, trust you, and then, tell them what it is. And they'll do the homework. They'll do a lot. Okay, let me tell you, you got to watch out for Steve over here or Mary over there, and let's go this way or that way, because they're sick of it too. So just realize these are people. You've got to build that relationship. It is not a transaction. And entrepreneurs always go into selling. It's not the way to work.
And before I call on Steve, I just want to also add on to what Annette and Harry said. In terms of relationship, there's that saying, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And we can be as excited as we want about our solution, our startup, our company. By nature, we're very, very enthusiastic. But that doesn't necessarily mean a hill of beans until we develop a relationship and understand it's about their world and their challenges and their problems and their pain points. That, when we demonstrate that understanding, particularly through listening, we earn the right to be able to evangelize our solution. And so doing your homework, asking questions, all contribute to that relationship. Steve, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to kind of comment to this whole stream about networking being across companies to go broad and deep. The challenge you have as an entrepreneur right now, it's always going to be time, but now we're all Zoom limited. The days where you could plop in and go to a meeting and they bring 3 or 4 people in and you could follow up and go hit the cafeteria, have lunch, get a coffee. Hey, I'm in town. Let's get breakfast or a dinner or a drink. That's kind of gone. And so when you start mitigating against that, so what it prevents you from doing is sharing your early concepts with people because they're just too early. And you're still kind of figuring out it's gray and it just goes nowhere. And so what's forcing, I know for myself and my company, it forces us to move the product farther along before you introduce it to them so that it's more works. Like before, you could put a PowerPoint or a prototype app that really doesn't work. Now they're going to see it farther down the line. They're going to see it, okay. Is it in production? Do you have customers? So I saw a text came in, capital or customers, right? I mean, do you have somebody else that will validate that? Because again, it's all about mitigating their risk. And then you can start branching out, doing that and figure out how to navigate it. But it's going to be more incumbent on a startup now to take their product farther and to make it more complete than what it might have been 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Steve, and followed by Annette, let's go to Bill's question in the chat. What is more important in your mind to a startup, capital or customers? It's a great question.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know how you pick either one of those. I really don't. I mean,
or maybe Bill is making a rhetorical statement as well.
No, it's a good thing. I mean, at one point I would have said capital and you put your head down, you work, and then you pop out with something, you go find a customer. But now, product market fit, testing. But at the same time, capital give you the runway. It's there. If it's 1A and 1B, I mean, it's hard to get away from that. I mean, I don't know how you do one without the other nowadays.
Harry, I know that, Harry, that must sound familiar to you. I see you smiling there. Annette, what do you think of that question?
I always lean towards customers, mainly because I feel like I can, that is something I can deal with. And capital's essential on one hand. On the other hand, I feel like I can get more capital. It leads to more revenue. If I have those customers and I can continue to build upon that, that would be my vote. If I have to go to a deserted island and have one with me, it would be the customers I would take.
And there's nothing wrong with 2 different perspectives, and we'll break the tie here with Harry.
Well, customer can give you money, but the problem is, it validates what you're doing. Capital just says, we'll take a bet on you, but you do need the capital. They're the yin and the yang.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm going to qualify. It also depends on your business. I'm in a very capital intensive business that has very long lead times. 5 years for a product pops out of me, right? This isn't like a little bit of money, stretch it for 6-7 months, start getting prototypes, getting customers. I mean, I'm building a piece of hardware. I'm fundraising in a couple of weeks here to build a factory. Okay. So, and then the product comes out the back end of that. And so you're selling a vision here, yes, to the customers, you're getting endorsements, but you're also looking at people understand capital and understand the nature of this business. So understand your business, and that will really direct you to. But I think both.
It's
So.
like asking, which is better or more important, the peanut butter or the chocolate. It's like you kind of need them both.
Or which of your kids is better,
I was going to say the same,
one.
same thing, Steve, and I can't answer that question with 4 kids. I'm going to interject a question where I would ask both of you, all 3 of you, to be brutally honest. Not that you're not honest already. What is the hardest yet most beneficial lesson you've learned as entrepreneurs? Our attendees here are entrepreneurs, and they're dealing with the challenges and themes that have come up today. So
We all know.
the most difficult but most beneficial. We'll let Steve go first.
And it goes also with vacation and packing a suitcase. To have a startup company, you need half the headcount, twice the money. Rule of thumb.
And how has that been can you cite an example of the biggest challenge or how that was a challenge?
Yeah, I mean,
That you overcame, I'm sorry.
Headcount is almost a luxury. And look, when I worked at Intel Corporation, I had a huge team. It's embarrassing how big the team was and the budget, and end of the year having money left over. With a startup, you're watching every single dollar and dime, and if you're not, then you're going to go out of business, right? And and you are really looking at, do I need that extra head? Does it really do that? I've had people say, well, I need an EA, right? I need an exec assistant. I go, no, you don't. Sorry, you can book your own meetings. I'm not spending 50, 60 grand on that. Absolutely not. We're just not in a position to do that. And it's just not a luxury. You have to be very, very frugal when you're a startup. And and headcount is something that easily starts exploding. Oh, I could do this. But when you really look at it, are they driving value and helping you get to that goal, or are they kind of a nice to have, or what happens sometimes, people are seeding for the future case. Well, I want to get ready because if this happens and I'm going to need the person, I go, so you have someone for 3 or 4 months that you really don't need. Listen, control your costs. If you see my beautiful office that we have in an industrial park outside of Cleveland, Ohio, it's not fancy at all, but it's very inexpensive.
I also think, in a way, this tragic pandemic has forced people, in contrary to, or unfortunately, without the ability to forever meet in some way face to face. I mean, our world has changed.
But look at it though. My travel budget that I've allocated to this company for 2 years, it's essentially zero.
Well, that's my point.
We're still getting stuff done.
Yeah,
like
that's exactly my point.
I got to be in Asia 8 or 9 times a year. I'm going to spend 8, 9 weeks there. Now I'm going, haven't gone, but things are still moving forward. It makes you really rethink, do I need to go on that trip, or is it a nice to have?
Right. And also overhead in terms of rent, if people are, unless they're working virtually, and all the things that go along with that, there's tremendous cost savings. So that helps in what you're explaining. Annette, your turn.
Yeah, something really different than what Steve just talked about. So my favorite lesson, by the way, you learn a lot of lessons when you do a startup. When you're running a startup, it's chock full of lessons almost daily. Is that I came out of big corporate world, and I jumped into, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go do the startup thing. Big, huge difference. And one of the things I did that was wrong as a CEO of a fast run and hard charging startup was I worked too hard to get alignment from the team. I worked too hard to get consensus. And that's what you do in a big corporation. In a small corporation, when you're running it, you really have to get everybody's advice. You have to listen. Then you have to call the shots. It is not a democracy. You got to roll. And so that was my hard lesson was, how do you actually run the thing? And I'll just say this to the women out there. I mean, we're natural collaborators. So sometimes it's something we have to learn the hard way.
Yeah, and it's tough. A lot of us want to be the nice guy, the nice gal, and it's a tough lesson to learn with full transparency, honesty, integrity. People respect that. I've been in situations at a startup. We just had to make tough decisions. Most of the conversations we had to have were pleasant. Other ones were, you know, very, very, for lack of a better word, nasty as well. We've got another question in the chat, but I want to ask before we get to Rich's question, Harry, the biggest mistake you've made and how you've benefited by, and excellent answers by Annette and Steve so far.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. I would say, and I learned this a long, long time ago, culture. Culture really trumps a lot of things. If you get, doesn't help you just get a bunch of smart people if they don't buy into the culture. So when you hire people, you gotta go, look, this is gonna be hard. You gotta you gotta be able to get up every day off the floor. You gotta realize you gotta do this. This is this. You try to scare them away because you say, here's what we are, here's what we're made of. And if you hire smart people that are staying in their own lane, that do something fun and challenging for them and like the big overall goal, you got it made. But it really is buying into the vision, because if you don't have somebody buying in and they're just looking for the dollars or they see it a different way, as soon as there's a hiccup, they're gone.
Agreed. Thank you, Harry. And
Yep.
For those who can see the chat, Rich Wolf, a great friend of Sprocket, says he's got a naive question, which I don't think is naive at all, but thank you for your humility, Rich, but not naive. Talk about time frame. What is the minimum amount of time that you have to hang in there before packing it in? Is it 2 years, 3 years or more? Or is the answer, it depends? And I'll start with Steve, who also talked about, listen, we got to go for the long run in one particular example. But Steve, can you address Rich's question?
You hang in there as long as you possibly can. I would never put a time frame on it. I mean, you do not know when the deal is going to happen. That flips you. And so it's do what you can. I mean, if there's value, if you believe in what you're doing and you believe there's value there, you hang in till the bitter end. And there's a story I have, a game company that released a title, it failed, released another title. They started running out of money. They start scrambling. They laid off half their team. They're down. They do 7 different samples of a game, and they're out of money now. The founder remortgaged their house to keep them alive for 2 more weeks, and they drew an image that said, "Hey, this is what it is," and that company's Angry Bird. Right? I mean, they were Niantic. They were going out of business, selling furniture, remortgaging their house when they came up with that concept, and the rest is history.
And you know, you never know when serendipity is going to rear its very beneficial head.
You know when it always happens? The moment you shut your door comes in the day after.
Right, Murphy's Law. We've got to leverage the power of serendipity.
You got to stay positive, because you know when things happen, the best things happen when it's really dark and you don't think there's a way out. If you keep your eyes open and stay positive and don't flip, I can't tell you the number of times it's happened to me in my life. I go, it's over. I can't do anything. And then all of a sudden, whoa, something changed it instantly. If you stay positive, keep your eyes open, it happens. I mean, I know a local company here almost went under. It became a multi-billion-dollar company. The CEO was down to his last few dollars. And then the world changed. And that, it happens to be Cvent,
Wow, and I know that well from the trade show industry.
5, 6, 7 times, and he was ready to quit about a dozen times. He told me, he says, "I'm leaving. I can't do this."
Yeah, there's a great video online from Denzel Washington that's called "Fail Forward," and I think you can even remove the word failure and just keep that positive outlook and learn from it. How about you, Annette, for the question?
I actually think you do yourself a disservice if you set a timeline. For all the reasons we just heard about. And, bottom line is urgency is the fuel of the entrepreneur. You need that urgency, because you wouldn't be staying up till 4 a.m. making things work without it. That sounds crazy, but if you really are passionate about what you're doing, that is what you'll do. So setting a timeline actually might be a recipe for failure. Yeah,
the universe is a funny thing. Serendipity is, as I said, is a funny thing. Annette, from the conversations or the discussion, I thank all 3 of you, because I think it's been an excellent one, an excellent session. What stands out most to you from your peers in terms of Steve and Harry that sparks a light bulb or is sort of an epiphany or a thought that they shared?
In terms of
What
anything
either
that we
Steve or
shared
Harry
today.
has said, what can you draw? Is there anything that stuck with you from either of them or both of them?
I'm actually still stuck on something we talked about before this session started. I liked when Steve talked about the fact that he was in a position at Intel to actually be looking at startups and making decisions, and that actually stuck with me a lot because I kind of make it my business to talk to people that were in Steve's position. I think that's a fascinating role because you get the opportunity to be inside of a big corporation and place bets. And it's a rare, I think I actually said this when we were chatting, it's a rare being to be that person inside the corporate, infrastructure. That I'm fascinated with that he sparked something in me there.
With power comes responsibility. Yeah. Same with me. Steve, how about you, from Harry or Annette?
For me, it's when I get in situations like this and I get the questions on the chat and dealing with other entrepreneurs, people in business, to me, it's just very validating. Being CEO of a startup is a lonely ass job. I got to tell you, things go bad. I really can't complain to anybody. I got to walk out of my office, big smile on my face and say, yeah, it's all good. Let's go, rah, rah. And I go home and kick the dog and yell at my kids and things like that, which is not good for my family life. So when I hear this, I hear other people that are dealing with it and how they're going through it and that they're making successes. And it's not like, it's not unicorn successes. It's small wins every day. So I walk out of this meeting today. I feel validated. I feel, I'm invigorated a little bit saying, you know what? Other people are doing it too. Annette's doing it. Harry's doing it. It makes me feel a little bit better about where I am at, because this is when you get yourself in a dark spot sometimes. A couple things start going bad. If you don't have some kind of a network that you can kind of go run things by, say, what am I doing wrong here? Or, is it time to pack it in and talk you off that cliff? It's being the CEO of a startup is a dark spot until things really hit and then they go really good. But even when they're going really good, there are crazy things happening, right? You're making different bets and decisions. So for me, it's just the overall engagement is I would do one of these, every couple of weeks. So it just makes me kind of want to get out of bed in the morning and go do it again.
I know that Chris has invited us to do this not every week, but every day we're gonna check in with OhioX. I also say I think you talk about lonely at the top and it's tough and there's no one to talk to. I always thought there's a business opportunity for therapists who specialize in entrepreneurs and specifically for that. I'd go to one for that reason. Harry, how about the question to you in terms of what you've heard from Annette and Steve?
Yeah, well, first I want to go, that therapist is called a dog. Okay. It's already out there. It's a dog. So I guess that when you said in the beginning, it's so true. People don't understand. Men are from women, planet are from Mars, whatever. Corporations are here, startups are here. It just doesn't meld. You go at different speeds, you think of different things, you're frustrated all day long. The reason we are entrepreneurs is because none of us could hold down a job. We always got frustrated wherever we went and go, I can't take this, it's driving me nuts. And then we were the troublemaker, so we had to leave. At least that was my problem. I was always the round peg trying to get in that square hole, and it never really worked. So I think just understanding, the difference between your business and the corporation, that you really are night and day.
Agreed. And I think that's one of the most successful things about SPROCKIT, or one of the special things, is that we really are a community. So one of the aspects of it is that we get together on a monthly basis. We encourage just the startups to work with one another and have sessions with these and validate each other and pick each other apart if necessary as well. So there's a wealth of knowledge from our peers in the entrepreneur community. And I think that's like organizations. I was telling Chris, for being as new as OhioX is, it's a remarkable organization, what he's done and what you all have done as members, and what a great community to be a part of. Ohio is sort of the best kept secret. I keep watching the progress that the state is making in terms of technology and entrepreneurship. And I think that comes part and parcel because organizations like Ohio X and from a SPROCKIT standpoint, we're glad to play our part as well. So with that, let's see. I'll go to one more question from Rich. Here's an observation, or it's an observation that I wonder if you guys agree. When we started the business 100 years ago, operating management actually made decisions. Today, decisions are made by committee. Let me see if I can scroll down. Strategic finance, strategic planning, strategic sourcing, legal, and more. Do you agree? And if so, how do you, can anybody read the rest of that chat there? Because how do you navigate the corporate committee syndrome? So this has to do with a team of decision makers. We touched a little bit on disparate entities. Rich is asking about a committee, and we will end on that question. So I'll go to Annette first for some brief answers from all three of you. I'm going to turn it back to Chris right after that.
It's a tough one. You know, it's part of the reason why I don't enjoy working in big corporations is, you know, you need somebody to call the shots at some point. And in a startup, you're calling them every day, every 10 minutes. So really, I think it's back to finding those individuals in the corporation that can champion you and get around those committees, if you will, somehow to get to the real decision makers. Somewhere there is a real decision maker, but I couldn't agree more. You could spend your life just stewing in some of those groups that never really kind of move things forward because it's not in their best interest to make a decision. So again, I think finding those individuals that are going to be your shepherd, I think that's essential.
And as Rich said, our champions are evangelists. I'm going to go to Steve and Harry and give you 30 seconds each so I can throw it back to Chris in just a moment. Steve.
You know, I don't have a great way to navigate it. Okay, I'm telling you what, it's the corporate tax. You do find companies that don't have that. You know, I can think of like Amazon, Google, they move fast when they go. Other companies, you go to Microsoft, you go something, and it's like, oh my God. In that case, you have to prioritize the opportunity saying, look, I always tell my guys, we can do 2 partner deals as a startup. That's it. You bring me 3, we got to drop one of the other ones because I don't have a big enough biz dev team to go in and just negotiate all these different steps. So you better pick the right one because you're going to invest a lot of time into it. I mean, it's more about qualifying.
Prioritize. And Harry, real quickly, but don't want to discount you there. Go ahead.
No, look, it's no different than dealing with a board at a shareholders meeting. If you want to do something, you want to control it, you better talk to every one of them individually before the meeting and know what they're going to say and get their commitment. So you get your ambassador to do that. You get your ambassador to introduce you to some of those because one person can rip a whole committee and take everybody in a different direction. So, you know, make sure you know before you go in.
But one person can take you to the promised land.
That's true.
I mean, it's double-edged.
It's true. It's true.
Yep. There's a Moses, hopefully, in every organization. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank our attendees. And most of all, I want to thank Ohio X and your leader and Chris Berry. He's a terrific one. Chris, thank you so much for the opportunity for us to participate today. And hopefully you'll invite us back within the next couple of years. We want to do the same. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Chris, back to you.
Well, thank you, Dan. And I just want to echo thank you to our panelists and those watching. And I'll end it on an Ohio note and why I think this conversation is so incredibly important is Ohio has, I believe, 54 Fortune 1000s. We also recently passed $2 billion in venture capital investment in the state for our startups. So you think of what Ohio is, and we have the corporations and the large institutions. And now we have this growing startup scene. And so I think the opportunity for our state is just connecting these two worlds. And so SPROCKIT with, you know, Steve and Annette, you know, expertise that you all bring is a fascinating part of that conversation. So thank you all. We really appreciate your time. Have a great day, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks again, all. Have a great day.
Some of your companies.
Bye-bye.